It's 189 episode number. Just Twitter throws up everything that, it's kind of a democracy of important stuff and also ridiculous shit. And Johnny Rotten, the Sex Pistol, I guess, is sick because he's been rescuing squirrels and he was bitten on the penis by a flea that jumped off a squirrel. That's all I got. I mean, I'm not trying to make a political point with that.
Oh, um, are you sure this is a true story?
I saw it enough, yeah. I mean, it's possible every once in a while somebody's death will be announced on Twitter, and it turns out to be somebody just bullshitting. But usually those things are fairly transparent in their bullshittedness. But I believe this is true, but I haven't verified it.
That is so weird that he has this super gentle side. He was a very mean guy when he was younger.
Yeah.
So
Now
he's mellowed and is now saving squirrels.
apparently, but I mean, squirrels are really cute.
Yeah,
So you can be a mean guy and still like squirrels.
yeah, I guess you can. I guess so. All right, so Rick, you usually start by raising a topic. Is there a topic you'd like to discuss
Oh, I guess
tonight?
this feels like, in terms of the Trump presidency, it feels like the end times. Because, it, now, there are plenty of Republicans or Trump supporters who feel like Trump is somehow going to pull this out. But everybody else, including 11 Republican senators now acknowledge that Biden has won the election. He's got 79.8 million votes probably tomorrow because there's still some states still counting. He'll probably cross 80 million votes. He's ahead by 6 million votes in the popular tally. More and more states are certifying their results, and of 36 results in lawsuits brought by Trump and associates, you guys have either withdrawn your lawsuits or have lost 34 times. Trump claims this is just the preface, the lead up to getting to the Supreme Court where he'll be vindicated, but most experts on that I see are saying that this is a virtual impossibility.
All right. Are you finished?
Yeah.
Well, it's actually a testament to your media that they try to mislead you and deceive you. The first issue I'd like to talk about is the lawsuits withdrawn. Um, a lot of those lawsuits are withdrawn because they're either duplicated by other lawsuits or they got what small thing they wanted or they were rejected, the Trump team knowing they'd be rejected so that they could appeal to the Supreme Court, rejected by Democrat judges. So the number of lawsuits being withdrawn, just going by math, means nothing.
Well, hold on. Just
Um,
the last judge to rule against him is a member of the Federalist Society in Pennsylvania. I mean,
well,
it's been a mix. It hasn't been all Democratic judges. It's been Republicans too.
okay. Well, the thing that would get me worried is if the Supreme Court turned back Trump's offers, because I'll tell you something about the Supreme Court that most Democrats haven't considered in a minute. But the other point you made was the number of votes. Like you did this last week. You like numbers, so you said how many votes Biden got, and to me, probably 15% of those votes are just not real. I don't think he got those votes at all. I think that that's the whole that is the whole dispute going on right now, is that the Trump team maintains that those votes uh, are fraudulent. So I don't care how many votes. You could say he got 150 million votes. It doesn't matter to me. That's what the whole case is about. Um, as far as the Supreme Court goes, I would like to mention something that interests me, and that is that both Justice Thomas, Justice Thomas was basically accused of being a pervert by Joe Biden in his confirmation hearings.
Not
And
really, no. Biden, I mean, Biden was in charge of the hearings, I believe, but
yeah,
Biden,
uh-huh.
there were four potential witnesses against Thomas, and three of them didn't testify. It was only Anita Hill, and Biden has said that he soft pedaled the charges against Thomas in the interests of propriety, and he just didn't. So
Yeah, well, he can say what he wants, but as I recall, those hearings were a circus, and it was and Joe Biden was the head of the hearing and could have done things a lot differently. And I am between I believe Thomas is going to be a fair justice, but I also think that it's payback time, and so I don't think Justice Thomas is going to be tipping the scales in favor of Biden when he gets this case. But that's not all. Don't interrupt me. Harris just got through accusing Kavanaugh of being a gang rapist about a year and a half ago, and we talked about it for weeks. So I don't think that Harris is going to be looked upon well by Kavanaugh. So you've already got, now I'm going to say right off the bat, I think that
wait a
Trump
sec.
is,
These are justices who are supposed to be impartial.
yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah, they're supposed to be, but I don't think, in my experience and in your experience, justices and judges are not impartial. They're assholes in black robes that do what they want and come up with a legal reason for it afterwards. And I actually think that your side is in big trouble if this gets to the Supreme Court, because you have personally accused two of the Supreme Court justices of personally being sexual perverts, and you on top of that, you've got at least three, possibly four more that just hate your guts, hate your side. But there's more. Biden is on record as having been considering packing the Supreme Court. Now, for those of the viewers that need a minute of reminder, if the Democrat Senate and President can just tack on an extra 10 left-leaning judges when they take office, that means that that the Supreme Court has no power anymore. Because don't
Biden never
interrupt me.
said he would pack the Supreme Court.
Yeah, he did. He refused to answer the question, which to me is, it's like if you ask Hitler, "Are you planning the Holocaust?" and he says, "I'm not so sure. I can't answer that question." That to me is enough evidence. If the guy can't answer the question, I'm sorry, I'm over 6 years old, Rick. I know what that means. And so let me just explain. If you pack the Supreme Court with 10 more justices that believe what your side believes, then the Supreme Court is no longer a court anymore. It's a rubber stamp for whoever can put the most justices on when they take over. So they would effectively be destroying the third branch of government. And I don't think that the Supreme Court wants that to happen to themselves. So for all those reasons, besides the fact, again, that I think Trump is right, if this goes to the Supreme Court, you guys are doomed.
Okay, so all right, so you said that you think 50, now I don't know if what you just told me is based on your own reasoning or that's what you're hearing from your media or a combination of both.
Which in particular do you take issue with?
Like you said that you don't think the Supreme Court will will want Biden to be president because they're afraid of being packed.
Well, wouldn't you be? Let
Given
me
the
put it to you. Let me put it to you this way, Rick. Rick, if you were a writer on the Jimmy Kimmel show, and
yeah,
you were and it was just you and your buddy, and they said, and Jimmy Kimmel came in one day and said, listen, we're going to put 25 more writers on the show, and it'll affect your pay and how many jokes you get on the show.
personally, I
Oh,
would.
please don't make a joke about it. Just be honest
No,
with me.
I'm going to be honest that um, I would have welcomed more writers
Okay, I know. I shouldn't have
because it
asked. I
meant that
shouldn't have asked
I
it.
could hide more because
Yeah, okay, and masturbate in the bathroom longer. And
no, no,
I knew
no,
I
because
shouldn't have put it in the form of a question.
no,
Nobody, no one, no reasonable person other than yourself would want 10 more people doing his job with him. If you were a person that enjoyed being in charge of things, you wouldn't want 10 more people that were specially chosen so that they would agree with the Democrat Party
now here's the
placed
deal.
on
Well, you used a bad analogy because
right, yeah.
writing jokes is not the same thing as delivering verdicts. Um,
Yeah, I
if you want a good production, it never hurts to have more writers to generate more jokes to choose from.
okay.
Um, but anyway, I'm just asking: is that your own thinking, or is that something that you heard or read a conservative pundit saying?
Well, look, Rick,
I mean, it doesn't really
it,
matter. It
it,
doesn't matter.
it is my own thinking, but I think anybody that thinks about it for longer than a few minutes will realize that the Supreme Court doesn't want to be packed. That if
Yeah,
you
but I mean, the
yourself
Supreme
were,
Court has had the same number. There have been differing numbers of justices.
yeah, not in our lifetime, and
Right.
so,
And so,
and
but so
not for 100 years.
right. I mean, there have been
Yeah,
fewer justices because there have been absences. But
okay.
but anyway, like an institutionalist like Biden, the idea that he would be eager to do something like that. Anyway, we don't have to argue about that. A lot of stuff would have to happen. We've had that argument before, but
No, not much
you
would
can't
have to happen.
well, you can't pack the court unless you have the Senate to confirm the justices.
Right. Okay. So right now, the justices would be deciding on whether they should give Georgia the opportunity to elect two senators who, with Biden, will suddenly destroy the Supreme Court.
All right. So I mean, so you think that okay. I mean, fine. So all right. So the next, I mean, I don't buy any of that because I find that justices, uh, I don't know. I mean, tend to uh, tend to at least want to try to look like they are ruling based on the law, and it would, based on the available evidence. You've just said that 15% of Biden's votes are probably fraudulent, and 15% of 80 million is 12 million votes across the U.S. Um, and your side hasn't presented any persuasive evidence of fraud of even in the thousands, let alone in the millions.
Well, there's plenty of evidence. I mean, I
But
can't
no
list.
evidence
It's
that held
hard
up
for
in
me to.
court.
It's hard. No, no, no. There's plenty of evidence. I mean,
Then
the
why in these dozens of cases that have been presented hasn't anybody claimed, at least persuasively, that there is fraud in the millions.
Because these cases are that are being reported to you, you're being deceived. Okay, your media wants you to be deceived. So what they're doing is when you've got 50 cases going on around the country and going on in 6 different states with I don't know 25 different attorneys, these are procedural cases. They're not debating about whether there really were fraudulent votes yet. They haven't even gotten to that point.
What are they waiting for?
These are cases to ask whether they should have a trial. These are cases about I read it one time and it was so legalistic that it just went out of my head. But basically, sometimes they drop the case because they got what they wanted. There'll be some little legal procedure thing, or they'll drop the case because one lawyer wants to handle a different state and another lawyer wants to take it over. So these are procedural things. I remember specifically that when they move around lawyers, sometimes one lawyer has to drop a case. But what you imagine in your mind is that the Trump team is going in there and saying, here are our 100,000 fraudulent votes. These are the names of the witnesses. How can you deal with this injustice? That hasn't happened yet. That
what are you
hasn't
waiting
even
for? Because you only have 2 more weeks until 11 states or so have already certified their votes, and another 3 tomorrow, and another 3 or 4 the day after that, and all the states have to be certified by like December 8th, which is only.
Well, I can tell you that the real fireworks will come when your team, your judges, your unfair Democrat judges, have begun rejecting the Trump arguments, and then the appeals will go to the Supreme Court, and that's where the fireworks will come out. That's when they'll present more of their affidavits. And by the way,
we both of us have been to appeals court. We know that appeals are when you receive a ruling in a lower court, and then you go to a higher court saying that the ruling was made in error, but the evidence is presented in the lower courts. That's where you.
Well, I can tell you that in one of the 34 cases, one of your judges didn't even want to see the witnesses. Said, "No, this is spurious." He just dismissed it out of hand. Okay. So they didn't even get to provide the 1,000 witnesses that they had that were going to testify that they had witnessed voter fraud.
So say this gets to a higher court, like the Ninth Circuit or any of the higher circuit courts. Wouldn't the higher circuit court say, look, we feel that judge ruled in error, and we're going to send it back down to a lower court for the witnesses to be seen there? You don't see the witnesses at the Court of Appeals. The evidence is heard in the courts that are set up to do that.
Well, they presented a lot of evidence to the one I'm thinking of in particular in Pennsylvania, and the Pennsylvania judge just basically talked to them like you talked to me. The judge just said, well, this is all spurious, which would be you saying that's all bullshit. Like I remember so many times in our conversations where I'll say 10 facts that I've read and I've tried to document, and I'll repeat it, and I'll take a half hour, and then you'll just say, oh, that's all bullshit. Okay, so that's basically what the judge did in Pennsylvania this week. They said, look, we've got 1,000 affidavits from people that witnessed voter fraud, and he said, spurious. I don't buy it. So
and in my media, we hear that a lot of these affidavits are don't stand up to much scrutiny, that it's people complaining. that there were vote counters wearing Black Lives Matter shirts, or that somebody was rude to them in a vote counting place. Um, that most of these affidavits don't allege actual like witnessing of tampering with votes, but rather witnessing like people's attitudes that they didn't agree with.
Okay, well, that's what your media is telling you. If you want to be misinformed, I mean, live in ignorance.
Well,
But
so I've got a thing we
I've
can do
heard,
because
I have heard verbally with my own ears. I have heard and seen probably a dozen witnesses since this whole thing got started, where they describe very heinous things. One guy was threatened with physical violence. Uh,
okay.
um, so do you want to talk about the witnesses? You said something about the certification, which
Well,
I'd
no.
like
So
to get
here's
over.
what I
And
want
then,
to
do you
do.
want me to talk about the witnesses or the certification?
Here's what I want to do. I want to set up. You're very confident, I believe, that the Supreme Court, or maybe a lower court before it even gets to the Supreme Court, will rule in such a way that Trump ultimately prevails. You're pretty confident, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm pretty confident that that's ridiculous. So that sets up another opportunity for us to make a wager. Shouldn't we just
Okay.
do that?
So hang on, hang on. Listen, this is going. I'm just following you down the rabbit hole of your issues, but there are
Okay.
so many issues. This is all spreading out. I'd
All
like to
right. So,
sort of follow.
let's talk about this. If you want to talk about certification, let's talk about that.
All
Not for
right.
too long, but yeah.
All right. Just briefly, I don't really care if you said another thing that is Democrat propaganda. That all the states are certifying. Everything's fine. I mean, it's just moving right along. Well, it isn't, Rick. Michigan and Pennsylvania, which are the two key swing states that Trump's going after, have not certified.
Well, because they're dates that they are required to certify. I think Michigan is tomorrow. I don't know. Is Pennsylvania the day after?
It's not a matter of the dates.
Oh no, they have dates. They have dates
Rick,
where by
please,
law
please.
they're required to
Yeah,
certify the bill.
I'm smart enough to understand that concept, Rick. But what I'm getting at is that there are the legislatures of Pennsylvania and the legislature of Pennsylvania have said that they're not going to certify until they have seen that there's no election fraud. So you probably have lost Pennsylvania. Now that's 20 electoral votes. As far as Michigan goes, that could go either way, but it looks like they may follow Pennsylvania, and I think that's another 16 electoral votes.
But we'll find out by tomorrow because that's their date to certify
Well,
unless there's like a legal stay.
right, but the thing is that it may even be that the Secretary of State of Michigan or the Governor of Michigan, who are Democrats, certify it, but then the Republicans who control the legislature in Michigan may refuse to elect a slate of to send a slate of electors. In fact, there's even a possibility that the governor will send one slate of electors, and the Michigan Republican legislature may send another slate of electors.
Okay, this brings up another point that I hear quite often on Twitter or in my media, well, mostly on Twitter, is sedition. I don't know what the definition of sedition is exactly, but it's like it's a flavor of treason. I don't know what the difference is. But when a state certifies its results and rules that it's concluded that this is a legitimate vote, and then you guys are asking for a state to vote for the candidate that the state has found didn't win. That sounds like going against everything that the democratic process stands for.
Yeah, well, the democratic process doesn't stand for certifying the results of a fraudulent election. So if you want to live in a country where fraudulent elections get certified, then I guess you're not as patriotic as you
Well, let
come
me
off.
ask you this. What changed? Do you consider the 2016 election fraudulent in any way?
No.
So what
Not, I mean,
changed?
not
What?
particularly.
How did this insidious thing where 12 million, where no fraudulent votes were very few, no appreciable number of fraudulent votes were cast in 2016, yet 12 million fraudulent votes were cast in 2020? What happened? How did this happen? How did this massive takeover, this huge conspiracy involving many thousands of people across all, well, I don't know about all 50 states, but at least 40 states. How did it happen?
Do you want to add more rhetoric, or are you finished?
No. I
Okay.
mean, go ahead. I mean,
All right. So if you want an overall explanation, I would give you this, okay? In 2016, Clinton had a huge lead in the polls. And I think the Democrats really believed the polls at that time. And I think they probably did some hanky-panky where they got maybe 2% more than they were supposed to, because they always cheat. But what happened was they got shocked by losing Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. And so they vowed that they would never let that happen again. And so this time they pulled out all the stops to create voter fraud every way they could think of. And so this particular election is the most fraudulent in our history.
okay. I mean, at least you've got an argument for why this is different. But okay.
Well, an explanation to my own self. You don't have to believe me, but
Well, of course
um,
I don't believe you. That's what the show is. But also, Clinton's lead was not that significant. Clinton's lead was, I don't know. I mean, it depending on what set of polls you looked at, it was in the few percent. It was nowhere as big as Biden's lead, and it was nowhere as no, not as consistent as Biden's lead. But
yeah,
we don't have to
well,
argue about that.
but the thing is that um, Clinton's Clinton, as I recall, and you do like to argue about this, but Clinton was the clear favorite. I mean,
Yeah.
there was no. I thought I went into the 2016 election like every Republican I knew, very philosophical, just saying, look, we did what we could, but we're probably going to lose. And I was pleasantly surprised that we won.
She was
Now,
the clear favorite, but her lead consistently narrowed to the point where my favorite pollster or poll aggregator, uh, Nate, what's his face, um,
Silver.
Silver at 538, gave Clinton only a two-thirds chance of winning by
Yeah,
election.
okay, that's fine. But what I'm saying is Biden's lead, I never believed. I've always thought that it was Democrat suppression polls. Most of these people, including Nate Silver, are Democrats, and they're not trying to inform the public. They were trying to depress the Republicans from turning out. In my opinion, their polls were completely flawed, and it it played out exactly the way I expected it to play out. In that Trump was way ahead in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and then I expected the Democrats to come back a little bit from the write-in ballots, the mailed-in ballots, but that he would maintain his lead. And it turns out that the polls. Now we argued last week. I don't know why you can't accept this. I saw polls that showed Biden vastly ahead in all the swing states, and it turns out that in all the swing states, and those are the only ones I'm talking about, Trump is either won them or is behind by 0.5%, or as much as 1%. And that's not what the Democrat polls showed us a month ago. They showed Biden ahead with a commanding lead of 7 or 8 points in every swing state. They even showed Biden winning Texas. So to me, the polls are irrelevant.
Well, I mean, the
Now,
polls didn't show. Okay, the polls showed different things. Polls showed Biden ahead in Texas. Some showed him behind in Texas. Um, Texas, I know it doesn't matter except that twice as many people voted early and or by mail as voted on election day. And so when those votes are counted, there's the potential for results changing drastically. For every day of vote, there are two early votes that, anyway. I
all
don't know.
right.
Should we go
So
on from this because we're not
no,
covering
no,
too much?
because you said there was no evidence. I Since we last spoke in Nevada, they found where Biden won by the narrowest of margins, like I don't know
20,000 votes,
one,
10,000 votes.
yeah, something like that. But in when you have several million, that means it's like 1% or so.
Hmm.
In all the states we're talking about, Biden is winning by sometimes 1%, sometimes two at the most, sometimes half a percent. And in Nevada, for example, it turns out that the one of the arguments we're going to make is that people double voted, that there were 15,000 people in Nevada that we can prove voted in two different states. That means that all those votes have to be thrown out, and that would throw the state to Trump.
So
Um,
you have the names of 15,000 people.
that's what they say. I don't have them here in my wallet, but that's what the Trump team says they
And
have about Nevada.
when is that case going to be heard?
I don't know. I don't know the day that that's going to be heard, but they're going to present it in Maricopa County. That's I don't know if that's
Arizona.
Arizona.
It's
Yeah,
Arizona.
yeah. Well, in Arizona, they have what did they have in there? I don't remember what the problem was there, but in Georgia they have what was the problem in Georgia? They did an audit, they did a recount, and they found that they left out 5,000 votes.
Well, Georgia's
Now,
now been counted 3 times, and they're going to count it a fourth time.
yeah, but they didn't verify the signatures. They didn't verify signatures with the people that signed up to vote. So all they're doing is recounting the same vote and comparing it to what the machine said. That's not counting it and verifying it.
Well, I
That's
think this time, I don't know what it's going to be a
yeah,
hand count.
I know. But what I'm saying is, even just the most preliminary, the most non in non investigative recount showed that Trump gained another 2,000 votes. It, and Biden is only ahead by 12,000.
Yeah, but no,
Now,
I don't. I saw no news stories that said that Trump gained 2,000 votes.
oh
I saw
yeah,
plenty of news stories that said that the number of votes didn't change appreciably, like a dozen
no, it,
here
it
and there.
it did. No, well then your media lied to you
Well,
again.
then we've been going for what, about half an hour? We should take a break, and you should find that
Well,
story.
actually, you know what? I'll just tell it to you, okay? And then you can stew on it for a bit. There were three counties in Georgia. Okay, let's start. At the Before the recount, Biden had a lead had about 14,700 votes. Um, then they did the recount, and they found that there were four counties that had not added their votes. Three of them were predominantly Republican counties, and in each of them, Trump was ahead by about 70% to 30%, or 60 to 40. And it amounted to a total of about 6,000 votes. At the very end, they found a small Democrat county with about 500 votes that were missing, and Biden led in those. Like he got 300 and Trump got 200. So that's on the books. I'm not making that up.
Well, I mean, we should look it up because it seems like the vote count changing by thousands
Yeah,
would
it
be the,
changed by thousands. Yeah, it went from 14,700 to now Biden has a lead of about 12,500, which is still substantial, but that's with just a very superficial recount.
yeah, but the count the votes were counted, then they were recounted twice, and now we're doing a third
Yeah,
recount.
and
Fourth
the reason your media is keeping from you is that when they recounted, the only thing they did was count how many votes they got
Yeah, I
and
understand that, but
and
like, how is
compare
this
it.
fourth
Wait,
count
and
going to be any different?
if you didn't interrupt me, I would explain it to you.
Go ahead.
Okay? The way these recounts were done was they took the ballot, they counted the number of ballots they had, and then they counted the number of votes that the vote counting machine said they had. And they found that they were similar except for about 6,000. What Trump is saying is a proper recount is where you go to the signatures of all the people that registered and you compare the signatures to the votes that they're supposed to have cast. And there is a somewhat reliable method of checking signatures where you say, does this really look like this person's signature? And if it's obviously false, then you throw it out. They throw out the ones that are obviously not the same signature. And they
Is
didn't
this
do
going to
that.
happen? I've read
Yes,
nothing
it
about
is.
this.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. In fact, the Trump team on Friday morning sued to have that done. Okay, which your media lied to you about on that. Now, as far as the witnesses go, there are two constitutional issues which I'll talk about afterwards. But the witnesses, I actually saw witnesses being thrown out in Pennsylvania, thrown out. They were literally told, you get out of here, or we're calling the police, or you can call the police, but you're not getting in to see these votes counted. There was a human wall of people around the middle of the night ballots that came in a van in Detroit. In Detroit, the Democrats formed a human wall around the van so that the witnesses couldn't see the boxes of ballots coming in at around, I think it was 3:45 in the morning.
Right. So how do you get appointed a witness, a Republican witness, a Democratic witness?
We're not talking about, we're talking about poll watcher.
How do you get appointed to be a poll watcher?
The local Democrat Party or Republican Party picks people that work for their organization, and they give them a little training, and they say, now this is how you look to see if the polls are counted.
And does each party get the same number of poll watchers?
Yes. In a democracy, which the Democrats don't want to live in, you want to live in a banana republic. But in a democracy, every vote has three people. Actually, you can have four, okay? And what happens is this. You get one person that takes the ballot out. Then you have on the left side and the right side, you've got a Democrat poll watcher and a Republican poll watcher, and sometimes an independent poll watcher. So there are literally three people often watching that one ballot coming out of the envelope. Now, what the Democrats did in Pennsylvania and Michigan is they refused to let any Republicans watch that process. Now, under Michigan and Pennsylvania law, if you do that, if you say, listen, no, you can't watch this. The Democrats can watch, but the Republicans have to leave, then that's it. That election is gone. If you've got proof of that, if you've got the Republican poll watchers coming back and saying this is what happened, and it turns out there are Democrats that were so shocked that even they reported it and said, look, they're kicking out the Republicans. This
So
isn't
if
democracy.
you Google, if you go
If you do
to
that,
Google, do you find Google also politically suspect if you Google
I,
shit?
I, I do, that's why I live by my common sense on a lot of these things. And if somebody tells me, Lance, part of the rules of making sure an election is fair is you have a Republican and a Democrat watching the poll counter, um, I believe that. And if somebody tells me, guess what? If you tell the Republicans to beat it, if you 86 the Republicans, but then you keep counting and you come up with 150,000 extra Biden votes, I believe that that's illegal.
So, but
Call
if
me
you
a
go to
lunatic.
Google, now you don't trust Google, but if you go to Google and you Google, were poll watchers, were Republican poll watchers uh, prohibited from watching you find out that this is, at least according to Google, it shows you that's just not a true claim.
Well, actually, Rick, we don't have to. It's fortunately for you and me, we're not going to decide this by weird tech companies and articles in the New York Times or NPR. What's going to happen is I've seen these witnesses interviewed. I've seen people, as I said, I've seen maybe a dozen people say this happened. I've seen people that use their cell phones. I've seen Democrats that use their cell phones and said, this is what happened. One of the workers that worked for Dominion, the poll counting company, said, I was there when all this happened. But fortunately, as I said, we're not going to depend on Google. This is going to be presented to the Supreme Court. And they're going to say, look, according to the rules, you're not allowed to kick the Republicans out and then bring in a trove of 150,000 ballots that all happen to say Biden on them, which is what they say happened, because we've got the computer saying that, by the way. I don't know if you know this,
No, I
but
looked
there
at
is
it. See, that's another thing that doesn't hold up. But anyway, so you believe
no,
that I
it
believe.
does hold up. In the middle of the night, I believe it
No, we
was
already talked about this
3:45.
before.
No,
Like,
no, no. Well, then it bears repeating because we may have new viewers. Briefly,
no, we
there
don't.
are
We've got the same old people listening to the same old shit. Thank you for watching our show, and we're sorry we're repeating the same shit.
No, I'm not, because I think it bears repeating because I keep hearing more and more about this. Since I knew just a little bit about it a couple of weeks ago, I've seen far more investigations about it and far more explanations. And it turns out that in the middle at around 10:30 at night, they told the Republicans, we're done. The Republicans left. Some of these, the big in Atlanta, in Detroit, and what happened was, in the middle of the night, after they left, about 2 hours later, box loads of opened ballots that had the same names on them stamped, without any down ballot names, just Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. 150,000 of these showed up, and there were 150,000 Biden votes and about maybe 3,000. No, it was 176,000 Biden votes in Michigan in the middle of the night in Detroit, and maybe 5 or 6,000 Trumps. So 176,000 Biden votes came in the middle of the night when the Republicans were gone, and we see it on the computer, and about 6,000 Trump voters.
All right, so here's my deal. So, well, I've got one question, then I've got an offer for you. So, in 3 weeks, let's say it goes my way. In 3 weeks, when the Supreme Court, let's assume it's over in 3 weeks, when the Supreme Court's done ruling or not ruling, and everything's kind of settled down. If it turns out it doesn't go Trump's way, you will continue to believe that some kind of fix was in, right?
Yes, yes, of course. But I just want to add the state legislatures can refuse to certify. This can all be done without the courts, and in that case, it goes right to the House of Representatives.
Yeah. So anyway,
where
if
Trump
that
can win.
doesn't happen, if
Yes,
somehow Biden becomes president,
yes.
you're never gonna believe that that it was legitimate.
No, I'm never going to believe that.
All right. So anyway, now let me make you a bet.
Okay.
Um, if Trump becomes president again, um, I give you $100. And if Biden becomes president, you paint a quick little, like a 1 or 2 hour portrait of um, our favorite dog. We have two dogs, one is much cuter than the other. And I
Uh-huh.
know you hate painting dogs because you don't want to become known as a dog painter, even though you are quite skilled at painting
Didn't
people.
I, didn't I paint a dog for you at one point already?
That's we already have a painting of the other dog. The other
God,
dog
I
used to
forgot that.
the other dog, and it's a beautiful painting. I get a little choked up every time I see it at my
Wow.
mother-in-law's because it's very beautiful. We ended up
Glad to hear it.
inheriting that dog because that dog was kicked out of the senior living center for biting an old lady on the ass. Though we believe the dog is innocent. We believe the dog jumped up on the old lady to say hello, and the old lady's ass flesh was so fragile that the dog's claws just went right into her ass. And everybody
Uh,
being, and so anyway, the dog got kicked out. Just and
mm,
we already have a portrait of that dog, but our other dog, which is a Westie, um, half Westie, half some other fucking thing, is the cutest dog in the world. So I'll make you this bet that
yeah. Look, I I need to think about that because I'm stacked up with commissions right now. I
okay,
got I got a lot of commissions and
that's
I'm
good.
just working constantly. And so, anything that takes up my time, I have to be very careful about.
Well, we
But
can. I mean, the dog is 7 year, maybe turning 8, so we have time. The dog won't get disgusting looking for another, 4 years when its
all
eyes
right,
get all like that oozy old dog thing. The dog will be cute for a while, so you know.
all right, all right. I just wanted to say one last thing about the legislature thing. If the legislatures refuse to certify, then they will send the electors to the Congress, and we have the advantage up until the end of the Georgia election. We have the advantage in the Senate and the House. So if people are mad enough, if enough of this fraud is exposed, and clearly none of it is being exposed to you or any of your average Democrat citizens, but if the Republican legislatures and congressmen are exposed to this and are mad enough, then we have a good possibility of refusing to certify the Biden electors, and then Trump would win. The House of Representatives has the ability to elect Trump, and the
Well,
way
I'm
they
not
would,
that's true. If it went to the House, then
yeah,
you vote. Each
just
state gets one vote, and there are slightly more Trump states than Biden states.
yeah, there's about 28 Trump states and 22 Democrat states. And so, just for our viewers to understand, you don't have to have the most members of the House.
Well, no,
It's
no,
the
it's a
most
crazy fucking
delegations by
system
state.
because California, with 40 million people, um, gets the same number of votes, one, as the state of Wyoming with 700,000 people.
Right. Yeah.
So,
That's the
so
rule.
Trump has, I don't think it's 28, but it might be 26, 27 little states, plus a couple big states like Texas and Florida. Um, but
Ohio.
oh, yeah. So yeah, if it goes to the House of Representatives, then Trump would, yeah. But I
Yeah,
mean,
and
you talk.
also the delegations from this. from the states may not be in Ohio. They may not be Republican. They may be Democrat. I haven't checked that. All I know is that he's got a strong majority in the House and in the Senate in case there is a competing slate of delegates, because it can get very complicated, but it can actually depend on the vote of both houses of Congress. But it doesn't matter because Trump's ahead in both.
But let's talk about, like, you talk about how the Trump voters are going to have their votes like disregarded in this fraudulent election. But I'm claiming, and based on like what the head of election security, who was recently fired, says this was the most secure election in history.
Yeah, well, the head of the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, said that it's obviously a fraudulent election.
Not the guy who was fired. That guy was fired for saying it wasn't fraudulent.
Yeah, the guy that was the head of the election security was fired, and he was on a board with Dominion. There was a Dominion guy on the same board with him, which is the fraudulent electoral machines that we suspect have changed the election.
If you believe the election,
the head of the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, that investigates fraud in elections, says that this was a fraudulent election.
Well, I haven't heard much about. I guess he's more on.
Surprise, Rick. I guess the Democrats didn't tell you that.
All right. So anyway, but like I believe that roughly 80 million people voted for Biden, and so and you're saying only 68 million people voted for Biden.
I don't think it's possible to know, but logically.
But like if you throw out the vote and install Trump, what you're doing is throwing out the votes of at least, I mean, even if you believe in the fraud, which I don't, you're throwing out the votes of 68 million Americans, and more likely 80 million Americans, more Americans than have voted for a president ever before in history by 10 million. The most.
Yeah, and more dead people.
You think that America is going to stand for that?
Yeah, and more dead people in swing states also. Thousands and thousands of dead people in every swing state voted for Biden. We're throwing their votes out too.
Have they found even 2 dead people who voted for Biden?
Rick, if you weren't so brainwashed, I've actually seen names. I've seen names during when there was a Tucker Carlson. And
Tucker Carlson apologized. Tucker Carlson had to apologize because they tracked down this lady. So the deal is that
Rick, everybody.
Hold on. This guy James somebody was found to have voted, even though he's been dead since like 2006. It turns out it wasn't James somebody. It was Mrs. James somebody. Because remember, in olden days, like really old people, the wives would not only go by the husband's last names, but they would say, yeah, I'm Mrs. James so-and-so. They tracked down this 95-year-old lady who said, yeah, I'm Mrs. James so-and-so, and I voted. And Tucker Carlson had to apologize and say that wasn't a dead person, that was a lady.
Rick, I know that your media found that for you, and it must be very gratifying.
Carlson,
Yeah, I know, but Tucker Carlson gave a list that went on for 15 minutes. I mean, the Republicans are claiming that whole cemeteries voted for Biden. There was a show in the beginning a couple of weeks ago where I was reading, where somebody got up and read the obituaries of all the Biden voters that had died 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Do you know that in Georgia, there are apparently 500 people over the age of 100, over the age of 105 that voted for Biden. That
doesn't. So I mean, this should have shown up in court.
No, it was dismissed. But we're going to present
Why
We are
was it
going.
dismissed? Why was it dismissed?
Rick, there are 34 cases. I don't know what happened in each case, but I can assure you that at the appropriate time, we're going to present the names of 500 people over 105 years old that voted in Georgia for
And you
Biden.
should take my bet. You don't have to paint the dog
No,
now.
I don't want to talk about your bet or your dog. You've just told me that you think this was an honest election, and I'm trying to give you some very serious things where hundreds, thousands of dead people voted, where people that were over 100 years old were voting by the hundreds that couldn't possibly be alive. There are people, by the way, in that list that I told you about where 176,000 people voted for Biden, do you know they don't have the names and addresses of those votes? They're all almost they list no precinct, no address. They're just out of the blue. And that's the margin of victory in Michigan.
Well,
And that's why
I believe the envelope that those votes came in is they have at least in California, they have a barcode that lets you trace it back to a person. Now you're not allowed to have the actual ballot be traceable back to a person. But they come in an envelope that's fully traceable. So I would think out of those 176,000 votes, they would have roughly 176,000 envelopes.
no, they throw the envelopes away, Rick.
Not in this.
When the ballot for the mail-in ballots, once the ballot is separated, they throw the envelope away. At least they did in Michigan. In Detroit, so what we have now is we've got 176,000 votes from the city of Detroit, a city with only about 450,000 people.
Why'd they throw the envelopes away?
I don't know. I don't know that, Rick. I'm not a crook, but I can tell you that they hardly. I looked at the list. Now I don't know exactly. It was hard to understand this. But for all the Trump supporters or the votes from the rural areas of Michigan, you could see the addresses. I saw a list. I looked at it for a long time. You could see their addresses. You could see their the city they were from. You could see they had signatures. The 176,000 votes in Michigan, it just said not available, not available, not available. These are empty ballots. In fact, there was a poll worker in Michigan, one of the people that assigned us an affidavit, that said that she saw ballots coming in that were pristine. They had not been put through a machine. They had not been folded and put in envelopes. They were literally flat pieces of paper that had only one name on it, Biden, no names of anybody else. And even the name Biden, even the signature, looked like it had been done by a stamp.
Okay, so all right. Okay, so I mean, you've seen all these claims, and you say that these claims will have to be revealed in court, but they mostly have, at least if they have been revealed in court, they've been thrown out of court. But they will be revealed later.
They will be revealed under. We're not going to get our case heard fairly until we hit the Supreme Court.
Okay, so
because you've got
we've been
Democrat
arguing about
judges
this
all the way up.
All right, we've been going on this for an hour, so I can't persuade you of anything.
No, but I just want to say, because this is very important, in Pennsylvania there was a constitutional argument that we're going to use. We're not depending so much on witnesses and voter fraud. The constitutional argument, I said it last week, I'll just very, very briefly, is number one, it was illegal in Pennsylvania for a Democrat judge to change the way the votes were counted a week before the election. That is a constitutional right granted to the legislatures. Okay? So they're going to present that to the Supreme Court. In other words, you can't have a judge usurping the right of another body of government. So we're going to use that to throw out a lot of Pennsylvania votes. And the other thing is this. In Pennsylvania counties, the Democrats the votes from Democrat counties, they told them that they could cure their ballots. We talked about it last week. An incorrect address or signature or something. They told them that before the election day, but they didn't tell that to anybody in the Republican counties. So all the Democrats were coming in and curing their ballots if they were flawed, and the Republicans weren't allowed to. That violates equal protection. American citizens have to be treated equally. Well, there's one more. In Pennsylvania, 17,000 people. It was either Pennsylvania or Michigan. I always get them confused because those are the ones that we're concentrating on. 17,000 people showed up to vote on election day and were turned away. They were told that someone had already voted for them through an absentee ballot. Now, that is statistically never happened before. It's highly, highly fraudulent because normally in a state with millions of people, maybe 100 people will show up and someone will have voted for them through absentee. But we're talking about 17,000. That's absolutely, completely unheard of. And we've got all of the evidence for that. That's black and white. We've got people saying, yeah, I showed up. I wasn't able to vote. We've got 17,000 people that are willing to say that. So that's going to be a big problem for you guys.
Okay,
And
so all right,
finally,
so this is all going to come out when it hits the Supreme Court in what, 2 weeks, a week?
so yeah, sometime soon.
All right, so let's move on. We've argued about this for an hour. So that
Oh,
leaves the
okay. All right. There's one other thing I wanted to say. I forgot what it was, but let's
can't
move
say
on.
it.
If I remember, I'll.
If you
No,
remember,
no.
yeah, bring it up.
All right. If I remember, I'll
So
bring
we
it.
got the only other thing we really have to talk about. I mean, Biden started he named his Secretary of State earlier tonight. This guy named Anthony Blinken. Anyway, but the only other thing to talk about really is coronavirus, which is Thanksgiving is 4 days away. Also fucking restaurants in LA. You probably don't even know this. Restaurants in LA were allowed to open for outdoor dining. My wife and I dined outdoors a couple times. It was not a relaxing restaurant experience with the waiters dressed up like.
Hang on. I'm losing you. Just a minute. Hang on.
Okay. Hold on. All right. Director.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, restaurants were allowed to be open for if you dined outdoors. That has now been stopped down for at least the next 3 weeks because
Okay.
the COVID numbers are going crazy. And
Uh-huh.
my wife and I both of us being, we're sad that it's going to fuck over restaurants but we feel like it might be a necessary thing given the way the numbers are going. I mean, it's bad for restaurants. We're looking at, in England, they're looking at 72% of restaurants and bars potentially going out of business because of COVID. London, I mean, all of England is now under a big lockdown. And we're facing a lot of that here again. And the numbers are last week, we hit 200,000 new cases in a day for the first time. This week, it's going to be more. We'll hit 220,000. Deaths, we hit 2,000 deaths in a day for the first time since early May. So we've got the vaccine. Let me clarify the bet because I think I may end up owing you $2. If 10 million people get vaccinated in the U.S. by the end of next month, I owe you $2. but I'm gonna generously extend the bet. If only 1 million get vaccinated in December, I'll still give you $1.
Was that the bet, or was it just that the pharmacies and hospitals had to be equipped with the vaccine? I didn't think it was dependent on exactly how many people actually got
I'll
the
give you
vaccine.
this. If 10 million vaccinations make it to pharmacies and hospitals or wherever they're going to be distributed from by the end of December, I'll give
Yeah,
you
it was
$2.
doses. Yeah, it was doses, not actually giving them to people. All right, do you want me to respond now, or are you done talking about
Sure.
uh,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Wuhan? All right. So I knew this subject would excite you. Does it bother you that Gavin Newsom was caught eating at a restaurant
Yes.
inside, maskless, with and enjoying himself with a large group of people?
Of course it fucking does. He
But you'll
was
still vote for him, right?
I mean, if it's him versus some ridiculous fucking Republican
Well,
like
wouldn't any
Ron Unz or fucking.
Rick, wouldn't
Well,
any
hold on.
Republic
There's
Rick,
who's the blonde lady that ran for some
wouldn't
shit? The tech lady,
uh,
not HP lady.
the
Actually, no,
one-
Carly Fiorina. You know, fucking. I used to have a lot of contempt for Carly Fiorina, but if it's Carly Fiorina, who's the blonde fucking the candidate? You know who
yeah,
I mean.
the one that hates Trump, who ran for California governor 10 years ago. None of
I
them,
will give you this. There are potential candidates who would run against Newsom that I would look at strongly
but
based
aren't
on.
okay. Well, the point is this: the governor he gave this apology for being caught eating at a restaurant with a large group of people without masks, just sitting inches from each other in a closed room. And he said, well, I'm human and I err. And when I heard him say that, I thought, is that what he said to his best friend when they found out he fucked his wife? Because he fucked his best friend's wife.
I didn't know that. I know that the Don Jr.'s current girlfriend is Newsom's ex-wife. I didn't know about
Yeah, but
the
that's
fucking.
irrelevant. Yeah, that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant, Rick. That's a diversion. I also
When
I know
did it happen when he was mayor of San Francisco,
no
or when did it
no
happen?
actually it was his campaign manager happened to be his best friend. I don't know which election. It was a recent one, and he fucked his best friend's wife. And you didn't know about that because you're brainwashed.
I mean, okay. I mean, well, no. I mean that
And
doesn't
then
mean I'm brainwashed. It means that I'm watching media that don't tell me that, which is not the same as being brainwashed.
yeah, and the only reason that you know that he was eating in a closed restaurant side by side with other rich people, the only reason you know that is because it was put out on Fox News was by Tucker
Well,
Carlson.
shit, I read it, and I mean, my wife got it on her phone. I saw it in the L.A. Times.
Okay.
It was all fucking over Twitter. Did I see it on MSNBC? I think so, but I don't
No, but
remember. But I
it
do
was
know, I do remember it's been covered more than once in the L.A. Times.
right, but it was broken. It was broken by the Republican, theoretically, Fox News. That
Wait,
wasn't
was
broken
it
by the
broken
other
or
people.
only theoretically broken?
No, I'm just saying Fox is no longer Republican. I'm saying theoretically Republican, but they're the
Come
ones that
on, why?
broke it.
Because Fox isn't wholeheartedly behind Trump?
But Fox is against Trump now. But that's not my point. My point is that right now,
So
being
you think Fox is
no,
wrong now? They used to be right until they started finding fault with Trump, and now they're wrong.
yes, but I have more to say about the
Oh, go
current
ahead, go
lockdown.
ahead.
Okay, LA is about to go into a stay-at-home order lockdown. So that's the next step. They're warning us that it may come in a week. where you can't even leave the house unless you're a fireman or a doctor or something. You can't even leave the house. It'll
Well,
be it's
I told Carol, I'm like, we got to stock up. We're not crazily stocking up on toilet paper, but I think right now we might have 17 rolls of toilet paper.
yeah. Let me go on though, Rick.
Okay,
I,
but
I
anyway, I know it's
that
coming.
was a
You
very
know,
helpful point,
so
but I
yeah.
actually have a point I'm trying to
Okay,
make.
go ahead.
Okay. So the point is that this is the first time where I've actually heard a sheriff of a big city, the sheriff of Orange County, which has millions of people, is south of Los Angeles, has actually said he's not going to enforce these rules. He's had it. He said that he was very diplomatic about it. He said that the police forces of the county of Orange County have are going to confine themselves to dealing with emergencies, which means they're not going to respond to people calling because somebody was out after curfew or somebody wasn't wearing a mask or a restaurant stayed open. They've had it. And I was hoping that sanity would prevail. See, let me explain where you're at right now, Rick. You are on the hypochondriac, completely brainwashed, left wing, people that don't need to leave the house, 1% of California. The other 99% of us get progressively more sane and angry. I don't want to hurt. I don't want to get personal. I shouldn't do that. But to
Well, that's
me,
okay. No, I'm
you need
happy
it.
to not leave the house. I've got everything I need in
Okay.
the house.
Okay. But what I'm saying is the rest of us, including the sheriff of Orange County and the head of the Republicans in the state legislature, the head of the Republicans in the state legislature said, look, there is no science. Governor Newsom has to give us the science that proves that you're going to catch the Wuhan if you leave the house after 10 p.m. because there's a curfew now. The governor is going to have to prove to us that there's science behind this new lockdown, and he can't. And there are a variety of sheriffs that are saying, we're fed up. We're not going to be going to your house. We're not going to find out how many people went to your Thanksgiving dinner. And openly, for the first time, now I don't want to speak too optimistically about my fellow Americans because they've disappointed me so far. But more and more people are saying, we've had it. There is a recall Newsom petition that is very close to passing. It's made a lot of progress. We have millions on it, and we're almost there. And there's a recall Gretchen Whitmer. She's the equally insane governor of Michigan. That is very close. They're trying to impeach Whitmer. So what I'm saying is,
she's the one that some lunatics tried to kidnap, and they're
yeah,
foiled.
I would not call them lunatics.
Well,
But
if they're planning to kidnap and possibly kill her, and in lieu of doing that, they were going to have their own court and execute people. Yeah, if they're planning on killing people, yeah, they're lunatics.
okay, for those of us in the YouTube audience and the YouTube company, I abhor violence and I'm against the kidnapping of public servants. However, I think locking down a state the way Whitmer and Newsom are doing is not constitutional. One of the sheriffs of one, I don't recall which state it was, but he's openly saying, I'm not going to carry out this lockdown anymore. In my jurisdiction, there is no lockdown anymore because American citizens have a right to determine whether they want to take the risk of leaving their house in a flu season. Now, one other thing, there is some science on this, Rick. If you're under the age of 75, you have a 99.9% chance of living now. Now, don't shake your head. We have therapies now that we didn't have 8 months ago.
Where did you see that statistic?
I saw it on the news.
Which news? There's
I
plenty of
saw
different.
I saw I saw it I saw it on Fox News, but
Yeah.
but you can easily look it up, Rick, because
Or you can look at the number of people who are dying. And
no, Rick, I here you could spend the whole week on this, but I assure you that unless you're 75 or older, you have a 99% chance of survival. Okay? Now we
oh,
do
wait,
not
is it not? You just wait. You gave two different numbers. It's either 99% or 99.9. I would
it
buy 99%. I wouldn't buy
it,
99.9%.
it it's 99.9 if you're under 12 years old.
Well, okay, so you're just throwing no. You got to be so. The real number is 99% chance of surviving if you're under 75.
And actually, I think that's if you get the virus. Now that part's very important, obviously, but it looks like what we have right
Yeah, well, yeah,
now.
if you don't get the virus, you've got a 100% chance of not dying from the virus.
No, but there's two different numbers. Okay, what are your chances of getting the virus, and
Yeah.
then what are your chances of dying? So in other words, it may be 1,000 to 1 that you get the virus, which would be even more than 99%. Be 999%, or
It's
be
not 1,000 to 1 because
99.999.
4% of America's already gotten it for sure.
Okay, all right. Well, but that's how they know these numbers. If 4% of the country gets it, and of that 4%, what's 4% of the country? 12 million people?
Roughly, yeah.
All right. So if 12 of 12 million people, 250,000 have died.
That's 2%,
Okay.
2.1%.
All right. So even by that statistic, you've got a 98% chance of survival.
Yes.
And of the 250,000 that died, probably two-thirds of them, probably three-quarters of them
I
were
know
over
the
65.
statistic. It's not a fresh statistic, but 80% roughly of the people who've died of COVID have been 65 or older.
Okay. So you're proving my point, Rick. You've got over 99% chance of survival. So
If
why are we
if you're under a certain age, yes.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is people that are over 75 can stay home.
Okay.
And the
But all right,
rest of us
so anyway,
and the rest of us
all right,
need to go on with our lives.
so here's what's going to happen, lockdown or no lockdown.
Well, wait, just wait, just to finish this up. Even if you're over 75 and you get the Wuhan, I think it's only an 8% chance that you die.
Well, that's a bad chance. Like 8% is a huge chance of dying from getting something.
Yeah, but you've got a 92% chance of survival, and if you're an American citizen, it's your choice.
Okay, all right, so fucking go out if you're 77 years old. It's your choice. But here's what's going to happen. The deal is that the number of cases are going to keep climbing. To some days we're going to have, because we've got Thanksgiving coming up, and then we got Christmas, and we got people going home, and people have fucking lockdown fatigue, and shit's just, the number of cases are going to keep climbing through December, through some of January, to where we're going to break 300,000, maybe even 350,000 a day for a few times. The number of deaths are going to climb back up to, some days we'll have more than 3,000 deaths, but then we're going to get the vaccine. It'll start trickling out to frontline workers, probably in December. I'll probably owe you $2. And then more and more, we might have 100 million first doses, because you're going to need 2 doses to be fully vaccinated. By April, we might have 100 million vaccinations out there. By June, we might have 200 million. And so we'll start seeing the numbers dropping during the spring and summer. And by the end of summer, we might have something close to herd immunity, where we'll only have 500 people dying a day. We'll only have, 70,000 new cases a day by July. So that's what's going to happen. We're going to have a lot of dying for the next 3 months, and then we'll have less dying. And
I
that,
just wanted,
and that, and then there are some things we can do to reduce the number of but we know what people's minds are already kind of made up. And so my predictions hold in the aggregate. If people are going to do what they're going to do.
I just wanted to mention one other thing. Another thing that Trump did in July, or I believe in March, I don't remember the day he did it, okay? He promised Moderna $2 billion. And so they came up with another vaccine that's as good as Pfizer's,
Yep,
and some ways
maybe
better. And that one's coming out the same time. So we have double the amount of vaccine that we thought we were going to have. Another good thing that Trump did.
Yeah, so the deal is that, in my view, Trump, and we've only got 1 minute because we have to wrap it up by 11, but in my view, Trump's presidency and his handling of COVID will be seen as largely disastrous with some bright spots. And one of the bright spots will be, when viewed from a historical perspective, or even from the perspective of a year from now, one of the few good things he did was he got he made sure that the vaccines were this warp speed thing, basically. But he got the vaccines done. Yeah. He helped get the vaccines done fast.
Well, I think that he will go down as, if people are fair, as one of our greatest presidents. He's done hundreds of incredible things in foreign policy, for the economy, but I also think that there's no way that the legislatures and the courts can all ignore the things that I said. I just wanted to reiterate, I remembered what I was going to say. If the legislature, let me put it this way. They can't ignore this. The CBS and the New York Times can ignore the things I said. But Republican legislatures and the Supreme Court with the conservative majority can't really ignore these things. These are legitimate arguments, they're evidence, and I don't think, as unlikely as it seems right now, it's equally unlikely that Trump would remain president. It's equally unlikely to me that the Supreme Court and the legislatures would also ignore all this evidence. So I don't think either of those things are likely. I don't think that the Supreme Court can be given all this stuff and they just say, oh, that's bullshit. And I don't think they can do that. So I actually think, as much as crazy as it seems to a Democrat, when all this is dumped in the laps of the people that actually have to make the decision, I think it would be, I don't think they can just ignore it. I think that it's just too serious. And so you may have a real problem. And I think Trump may hold on to his presidency because of this.
Okay.
One last thing I wanted to say briefly. I remembered what I was going to say. You said you realized that they'd be ignoring the 150 million people that voted for Biden. And then you said, no, it's 90 or 80, and then
it's 80, but you think it's less, but it's 80 million people.
Okay. Well, if they ignore this, then they ignore the 74 million that voted for Trump.
I mean, that's a fine point to make. That's a fine point to make. But
wait, there's one more. There is also a good reason why each state in the House of Representatives only gets one vote. And that's because our founding fathers, when they were trying to keep all 13 colonies together in fighting the British, wanted to treat each colony as if it had a vote. They had big states and little states in 1776 as well. Virginia was giant, Rhode Island was always tiny. So they deliberately did a lot of things that gave each state one vote.
Yeah.
That was so the fact that California will not be recognized for its massive population doesn't matter to the Constitution.
Yeah, we're still dealing with the shit that the founding fathers had to do 240 years ago to keep fucking, Virginia from, well, actually Virginia was, but anyway, to keep all the states from throwing hissy fits.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing. I like living in a constitutional republic, and as a Democrat, you don't. Anything else?
No, just that I've said this before, and I'll just, as we wrap up, I'll say, that you tend to out-argue me, but I feel better now in that all the ducks and pigeons and turduckens are coming home to roost, and I don't have to out-argue you because I think reality will do the arguing for me. And with that, we should say thank you for watching, and it's going to be an exciting week. One of us is, maybe not this week, maybe next, one of us is going to be sorely, I hope it's not me, that would be bad, disappointed. And
good night.
All right, good night.